Hello, I'm Francesco Pizzo, founder of GHAMAK. First of all, thanks to everyone for supporting, sharing, and standing by me through the GoFundMe campaign. Your help is making a real difference. In this third video about my legal battle against Games Workshop, I will explore the topics of originality, similarity, and likelihood of confusion. As we explained before, Games Workshop accused GHAMAK of unfair competition and claimed that because GHAMAK's models can be used as proxies, customers can associate them with Games Workshop models, they should be considered as slavish imitation of their protected IP, stating that each and every one of their models is so unique to deserve protective rights. We think that by using this approach, Games Workshop is trying to avoid an accurate analysis of the models to look for elements of copyright infringement. In our opinion, this might be an attempt to circumvent the need to prove the originality of their models. There are three separate elements to be discussed. Are all proxies illegal? As Games Workshop has been asking us to take down our catalog almost entirely, without giving us any guidance on which elements and characteristics of their models should be considered original and distinctive, this implies that all proxies, regardless of their design, are considered illegal by Games Workshop. We firmly reject this claim. First of all, because people are free to substitute a part of the game, miniatures, terrain, etc., with anything they want when playing at home. The fact that people play Warhammer with paper models, Legos, or just bases with names of the model written of them disprove their statement. Secondly, because even the tournament rules of competitions organized by non-Games Workshop organizations state that it is possible to use proxy models as long as it is clear what those models represent in the game. Imagine Mercedes or Ford writing in the manual of your car that you can only use original parts on your car. Would that make it illegal for you to install a spare part produced by a third party? Would that make it illegal for third parties to produce a sell components or spare parts compatible with your car? Of course not, as long as such producers do not induce the public to believe that their products are coming from Mercedes or Ford. At this point, we need to consider if GHAMAK, as well as most of the companies producing models somewhat compatible with Games Workshop's games, is infringing on Games Workshop's IP, or, to be precise, is slavishly imitating Games Workshop's model. Two questions must be asked. Are Games Workshop models so original and unique to benefit from exclusive rights that forbid anyone else to make models that represent similar characters, monsters and tanks? Are GHAMAK models too similar to Games Workshop models to be considered slavish imitation, leading to unfair competition? Are GHAMAK models so similar to Games Workshop's ones that customers would think they are from Games Workshop? Let's take a look at some of Games Workshop's models, which they claim are absolutely unique and original. Let's start by looking at their tank Rhino. Some people think it is clearly inspired by the US M113, others by the British FV 432. The overall shape is similar and at first glance you might feel they are the same tank. The real-life tank is an armored troop transport, just like Games Workshop ones. If you look closely at the details, you can see some differences, though the 4 exhaust tubes On the sides, the double window for the driver instead of the single window on the right side of the real tank. The design of the armor plates is different while retaining the royal vibe. Sam goes for the turreted version. Do such difference in the design make Games Workshop's Rhino a unique model? Is Games Workshop model different enough from the real tanks to be considered original and distinctive? Or it is so close to the real tank that it cannot claim protective rights on their designs? If you look closely at these two models, you will find as many differences in the design between GHAMAK and Games Workshop models as between Games Workshop and the real tanks. The front armor is totally different, with a single window for the driver on the left side. The position and shape of the front lights is totally different. Games Workshop's model having 1 light per side and GHAMAK having 5 lights per side. GHAMAK's model does not have the 4 exhaust pipes on the sides of that shape, and the position and the side sponson are totally different. The turret itself has a totally different design. While Games Workshop's one is closer to design to the turret of the real tank, with its diamond shape, GHAMAK's turret has a more rectangular shape. While both tanks represent a similar type of vehicle, GHAMAK models contain enough different design choices to make it as original as Games Workshop's model is original compared to the real tanks. If these differences are not enough to consider GHAMAK's model sufficiently different, then Games Workshop's model itself was not original. Let's take another example at same of the alien armies released by Games Workshop. According to our knowledge, the first precursor of the Necron models was published in 1990 as Chaos Android in Space Crusade. The design difference between the two models are striking, or not. The Necron's first appearance in White Dwarf 217, January 1998, the main difference from the previous model was the addition of the decorative symbol vaguely Egyptian or Aztec on the chest. Let's look at the differences in design. The armor on the leg and the chest has a different design. While Games Workshop's armor recalls closely a skeleton, GHAMAK has no explicit references to the rib cage or ship bone. While Games Workshop model has no shoulder pads, GHAMAK model has a shoulder pad with its own artistic design. The head is also totally different. GHAMAK has a much larger and round cranium, while Games Workshop's model has an elongated face, almost triangular. Also, the design of the weapon is different. While Games Workshop's weapons have two cylindrical elements with blades at the tip, GHAMAK's weapons is more rectangular and lack double barrels. Finally, the logo on the chest of Games Workshop model is vaguely Egyptian, while GHAMAK's model is a disc. Once again, we invite you to consider which elements in Games Workshop's design are so original to say their Necron model is not a Terminator. The logo on the chest, the design of the armor, and still, whatever design choice make Games Workshop model original from Terminator, if any, were not replicated by GHAMAK on their models. Once again, if GHAMAK's model is a counterfeit copy of Games Workshop's model, wouldn't Games Workshop model be a counterfeit copy of Terminator? Another example concerns the less known character, the Kroot. Games Workshop released a sketch of the Kroot in 1998. In June 1998, Magic the Gathering released 3 illustrations of their Night Stalker. Only 3 years later, Games Workshop published the first Kroot models. The Kroot, supposedly original model on which Games Workshop claimed protective rights, lost almost of the initial sketch and instead were very similar to the Night Stalker. The head spike, the back, the tribal look of the rifle with a bandage wrapped around the barrel were all very similar to the Night Stalker. The main differences we can see are a loss of the loincloth in exchange for a very primitive cloth on the chest, the shape of the tip and the butt of the rifle. Are these minor changes sufficient to make the Kroot an original and distinctive model? Can you find similar minor differences between GHAMAK models and Games Workshop models? Now let's move to the fantasy line. Here Games Workshop's claims seem even weaker due to the immense prior art characterizing most of their models, that include even historical characters. Entire lines of Games Workshop's armies are generic interpretation of medieval armies. Bretonia, with its mounted knights, have literally no creative elements that differentiate from the historical characters. The shape of decoration, shield and barding are neither novel nor original, let alone distinctive. Let's consider the Egyptian undead army. Both are inspired by ancient Egyptian mythology and historical decoration, with both models display decorative elements clearly inspired by ancient Egyptian culture. The jewelry, the khopesh, the symbolism related to snakes, beetles and so on. The specific decorative choices are very different. Once again, if Games Workshop's model is sufficiently originally from the common imaginary of ancient Egyptian mummy to deserve exclusivity above every other representation of an Egyptian mummy, the law does not grant them exclusivity from because it dominated the market so much and for so long that most people can see the possibility to substitute their unoriginal models with other unoriginal ones. And once again, if we consider Games Workshop interpretation of a mummy as original because of the specific decoration, shapes, pose, then any other representation that has different decoration, shapes and pose is original in itself. Let's end with Games Workshop's Preyton, a stag with bat-like wings released in 2012, and Preyton, a fictional hybrid animal combining the physical feature of a stag and a bird. The Preyton was invented by George Louis Borges in his 1957 book of Imaginary Beings. In this case, Games Workshop swapped the bird-like wings with bat-like wings and gave a specific representation of its horns and paws. The name switched the position of two letters, clearly playing on the similarity with the pre-existing creature. Is this model original? Can Games Workshop prevent other companies from making models similar to the original Preyton and, as a consequence, similar to their Preyton? Is their model is different enough from the original model? A very simple modification such as replacing the wing is sufficient to make the Preyton a totally different model. In this case, we believe that most of our models are equally different from Games Workshop models. We invite you all to look at Games Workshop's models with a critical eye. Many of their models are clearly inspired by pre-existing characters or monsters. Others, like the models of their Warhammer fantasy line, are even less original, touching closely historical models and the representation of mythological or Tolkien's imaginary characters. This is a key issue in the lawsuit, since Games Workshop targets almost every model in our store, including skeletons, orcs, World War II inspired soldiers, etc. We believe that Games Workshop does not own any exclusive IP rights on these generic models. The vast majority are generic models inspired by mythological books, movies that clearly are prior art to Games Workshop models, and it is not surprising that so many of you can immediately tell for many of their models which Games Workshop model is derived from which mythological creature, movie, books, anime or comic. If they had been specific in their request and open to discussion, we would have gladly given our availability to remove or modify some contested models in the parts that were subjectively considered too similar by Games Workshop, but they did not. They just wanted to close us down and prevent me from working in this field in the future. And this is not okay, especially from a company whose supposed IP is a re-elaboration of so many common tropes, symbols and characters. Why should Games Workshop be the only company to make aliens which are inspired by HR, Giger, Xenomorph, or orcs and elves from Tolkien books? Why should Games Workshop be the only company to sell futuristic tanks that are similar to real tanks? By now, many of you have already looked at our catalog and compared our models to the models of Games Workshop. Judging by the comments we read, there are people who think some of them are too similar and people who think they are different enough. Now, this is a key element you should consider. According to the Italian law, the likelihood of confusion is an essential element to establish unfair competition. When you compare two models, we invite you all to consider the change that, by looking at a model from GHAMAK, you would think that model was a model sold by Games Workshop. See you in the next video.